All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you after a Rams Week 3 win against the San Francisco 49ers in Los Angeles, 27-24. And it was just an absolutely electric game. Vibes are high. Everyone is absolutely thrilled, Jake. I mean, what a moment. What a game.
Yeah, I don't normally dance on this channel ever, but I want to dance right now, Alexis. I do. And by the way, you'll be dancing too if you use our prize picks. By the way, prize picks, okay? Sponsoring the channel. Love prize picks. You guys know if you've been watching the live streams and whatnot on this channel, but you can sign up today using my code JKBogan. Get $50 instantly, whether you win or lose, if you play a $5 lineup on Prize Picks using the code JKBogan. Okay. In addition to that, Prize Picks is rolling out, and this is perfect, Alexis, because first off, you like the Chicago Bears, right? Like you're not you're a Rams fan. You're not like a Bears over Rams fan, but you like the Bears. Well, they're both playing, right? So they're both playing this week. Caleb Williams, we're going to be rooting for him to have at least 1 yard because the gimme that Prize Picks is offering is 0.5 yards. So you don't have to root for him to do much after that, but he's going to get obviously 1 yard. You just have to hit more. It's a free square. Choose a player. You have 2 to 6 options there. If you like their projections, you hit more or you hit less. Either way, Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Alexis, back to you.
So, Jake, I mean, this Rams 49ers game was just so intense. I mean, listen, it's always intense, as we all know, when we play the 49ers. We're division rivals. In recent years, both teams have been very, very good. And, obviously the NFC Championship matchup, is the highest level that we have played the 49ers, and thankfully it went our way. But a lot of these regular season games haven't. They haven't gone our way. And so it was really, just again, I think everybody was on edge going into this game. The Rams have had a ton of injuries, but the 49ers have had injuries too. So it's just a really different atmosphere, I think, than we're used to going up against the 49ers. The game started, immediately did not go the Rams' way. The game started, the Rams didn't look good, quite frankly. The defense didn't really have an answer for Brock Purdy. They didn't have an answer for Juwan Jennings, who you and I both really like. They just absolutely couldn't figure it out. So immediately Rams go down 14-0, and the vibes were pretty low. I saw people on Twitter /X saying that they were going to turn the game off. They said it was over. The defense is trash. We can't watch this anymore. We're about to get blown out by the 49ers. But, Jake, the Rams offense, led by Matthew Stafford and Kiren Williams, said, hold on a second. This isn't over. We're going to put this game on our back, and we're going to get the job done. And Jake, they certainly did. While the defense has been shaky at times, this offense just absolutely throughout the game stepped up. It's especially, listen, Kyren Williams, three touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving, rushed for 89 yards. Fantastic game, 27 yards receiving. Absolutely looked electric out there, had his way with the 49ers, very efficient on the ground, going against that defense. Tutu Atwell, who we called was going to have a big game, 93 yards receiving, 4 receptions. One of them, Jake, we were so close to nailing that bomb touchdown. Just a little, so close, but it was still amazing. It got the Rams down the field. Regardless, absolutely stepped up, had a stellar game from Tutu Atwell. Jordan Whittington had a very good game. He had 28 yards receiving for 3 receptions. But Jake, we're going to talk about later is the blocking ability of Jordan Whittington, because that was an unspoken thing that was successful for this Rams offense. So just the offense, Jake, and Matthew Stafford absolutely carried us through. They were able to confuse the 49ers defense. We were able to pull it off. I mean, kicking a game-winning field goal with 2 seconds left on the clock. I mean, it was 5 seconds when they kicked it. Brings
no
the
idea
clock
how
down to 2.
there was still
Yeah,
time
I mean,
on that,
it was just absolutely cinematic the way
Yes.
that we won, especially being down, because for a lot of the game, the Rams were down. You know, they would kind of come back, and then Juwan Jennings would score again. And then, we were playing from behind. But Jake, so much credit to this Rams team. Uh, Particularly the offense, but the defense actually really stepped up in a lot of big moments in the game, just for the fight that they have. Jake, what was your overall thoughts about this game?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. I mean, first off, Stafford, the job he was able to do, he looked like Fran Tarkenton out there. You know, there were multiple times where he had pressure on his blind side, and look, Alec Jackson, he played a good game, but this is also somebody that was suspended for 2 games. He's behind the 8 ball, right? I thought Limmer played really well. I thought you saw some great things from Logan Bruss as the game went on. He struggled early on. He dislocated his finger. He looked down and he's like, oh, that's not supposed to go that way. That was kind of funny. Came back in. Diedick played well in those 2 snaps he got, by the way. So shout out to Justin Diedick, who was just called up off the practice squad and actually signed to the 53. So, I just wanted to give credit to those guys. Havenstein looks like an absolute unit. That is a great sign. I think Dotson's dealing with something. I do, because he wasn't amazing in this game, was probably the weaker link, I would say, of the 5, but he's still Dotson, right? So Stafford still, despite all that, he dealt with 19 pressures. That's not bad. That's not a bad output for the 49ers. But it's also, it's not great for Stafford either. And Stafford had multiple times where he had to duck and dodge and bob and weave. And I was really impressed with his ability to keep his eyes downfield, which he always does. But Alexis, I got some, of course, would it really be DTR without the stats? No, it would not. So I got some stats here for Matthew Stafford, which I'm sure you probably saw if you guys are on Twitter. I can't help myself, right? Matthew Stafford completed his 48th game-winning drive of his career when you include the playoffs. 38th fourth-quarter comeback of his career in addition to that when including the playoffs. Stafford, though, talking about the regular season, is 7th all-time in regular season with 45 game-winning drives. That's 13 fewer than Tom Brady, who is obviously, he finished his career, at 46. Stafford's 10 years younger than Tom Brady was when he finished his career. In addition to that, Alexis, Stafford also tied Drew Brees in that game. He tied Drew Brees for 5th all-time with 36 fourth-quarter comebacks, and he is 10 away from the all-time record with Tom Brady in the number 1 possession as well. I'm going to say it. It's not shocking. Everyone knows where I stand on Stafford, and you yourself, you are a Stafford fan. Matthew Stafford is the most underrated quarterback in the game, and I don't think it's remotely close. The question is, where are you putting him on a list with quarterbacks? Because to me, Patrick Mahomes number 1. No one's going to really debate that, except you could make the argument for Josh Allen. I think after those 2, Stafford's number 3. I think Stafford's ahead of Burrow. He beat him head-to-head in the Super Bowl. I think he's ahead of Jalen Hurts, who's fallen off a cliff. He's ahead of Dak Prescott. He's the best. Well, let's start off with that. He's the best quarterback in the NFC, bar none. I think Kirk Cousins is number 2, though. He played a great game on Sunday night. They got screwed. But either way, Stafford is the best quarterback in the NFC. So when you look at the AFC, Alexis, people try to fit Trevor Lawrence in there. Trevor Lawrence, I know the game hasn't started yet, but Trevor Lawrence, I might have actually started by now. Trevor Lawrence is 0-7 in his last 7 games. And people say, well, quarterback wins. It doesn't matter. At some point or another, that's on the quarterback too. So I'm not putting Trevor Lawrence ahead of him. Justin Herbert doesn't look amazing this year. I know he's been banged up, but he doesn't look amazing. So really, I guess I'll send it back over to you because, I want to talk a little bit more about the offense. Obviously, there are other things to talk about. But on the Stafford front, where do you rank him? Where do you rank him specifically, Alexis, on this list? Because to me, he's only behind Mahomes and Allen. And you could have an argument he's ahead of Allen because he has a ring and Allen doesn't. Oh, you're muted.
So sorry. I was agreeing with you. I said I would have him 3 as well, behind Mahomes and Allen. I just think, and I think it's just a shame that he's so underrated because a lot of people would probably put him 6 or set. They probably throw like a Lamar or a Burrow in front of him, but no, I think it's Matthew Stafford, and I think that's incredible considering his the longevity he's had in his career. I mean, that game last yesterday against the 49ers required him to be locked in on an extremely high level because the 49ers defense actually they didn't have that bad of a game. We just had to outsmart them, and you had to basically have Matthew Stafford and Kiren Williams, like we said, had to really grind it out against this defense. And I just thought, Stafford made a couple big time throws. They were very impressive, including that one that we talked about to Tutu. So that was great. Um, Looking now, obviously we know Stafford was incredible. I think we should talk about the Kyren Williams thing
Absolutely.
because, a lot of people have been asking me and they've been on the timeline. And I think it's a really weird conversation to have so soon. Kyren Williams goes and has an amazing game. We don't win the game without Kyren Williams. Who's the star of the game? It's Kyren Williams. He scored every single touchdown of the
Seven
game.
first downs, by the way,
Yeah,
moving the
seven.
chains.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This was Kyren Williams' game. Everyone's really wondering why Blake Corum wasn't out there, and so I wanted to talk about it because I've had so many people ask me and be like, why it doesn't make sense? Why did we draft him? Then why did we draft him? And there's a couple different things that I'm seeing, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but what I hear from everybody else, Jake, is and right or wrong, this is what I'm hearing is, well, Blake can't pass protect. And we know that Kyron's an insane pass protector, and so is Ronnie Rivers. So, sure, I think that's a valid argument. People say that, Sean McVay doesn't play rookie running backs. It's another argument. Another argument I've seen, and I think this is very unfair, is that, Blake was literally only drafted in case Kyren gets hurt. That if Kyren is healthy, Blake isn't going to see the field. I don't think that's the case. You do not spend a third round pick on somebody who you simply have as insurance. That would be negligent to the extreme, and I would be very angry if we used a third round pick to do. It's just also just would be super unfair to Blake to draft him. That's just an absurd argument. And Jay, my opinion on this is it's probably a mixture of a couple things. I do think pass protection has to do a lot with it. I think that Blake, there's a learning curve there for him with that. I think that Kyren is very good at it, and Ronnie Rivers is also. A lot of people don't give him credit for this, but Ronnie Rivers is actually not bad as pass protector too. So you could see Ronnie Rivers in there doing that. So he deserves more credit for that. I think also. I don't, Blake is not on Kyron's level yet. I think a lot of people don't want to hear what has come out of training camp or, Blake is a rookie. He has a long way to go. He's still a rookie. He shouldn't be theoretically, Kyren Williams is really good, guys. He's really, really good. I think every Rams fan knows that now. And as good as maybe Blake was in college, he's not there yet, and he also doesn't have the game experience. So in big games, in big moments, you're going to see Kyren Williams more anyways. But also what we know about Kyren Williams is he is such a crucial part to what this offense wants to do. If Kyren is off the field, it hurts the Rams. And we just know that. We know that from last season. We know that from what we've seen this season. So for right or wrong, I just don't think McVay is like super inclined to start throwing Blake out there yet. I would like to see him more, but I understand it. I'm not sitting here totally confused. Jake, what are your thoughts on this? Because I did tell several people we would definitely touch on it tonight.
I love that you brought this up because I have a completely different take. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously hindsight's 2020. He should have been utilized in preseason. I think that's ultimately why people are really confused because, I mean, even Cameron Kinchins was used in preseason. He did not get utilized in preseason. So here's my take, right? You buy something from Amazon thinking it'll help your productivity and then you never use it. You're thinking it's really going to help you, right? Alexis, I can already tell on your face you do this. I do this
I'm
too.
so nervous.
I do this too. Don't worry.
Yeah. No,
This is a safe space, everybody. Everybody does this, okay? It's true.
no,
Like
I'm just nervous where you're going with this statement.
no, like you'll understand. Like
All right.
for you gamers out there, if you play on PC, you have Steam. Everybody has games that they never play. It's notorious. People buy games because they're like, oh, it's cheap, and then they never play it, right? So where am I going with this? I'm not trying to trash Corum, but I'm saying this. I think, believe it or not, as much as this organization you would think has a plan, and they probably did. Corum was the number one guy when Kyren went down. People forgot Kyren went down in training camp, right? He got hurt. And Corum, in all those pictures that they were posting on social media, was in the backfield, and number 9 was handing it off to him. So why hasn't he gotten one like actual meaningful carry in a game in the first 3 weeks? Well, guess what, Alexis? He got forgotten about. And you know what? It's not even that he got forgotten about. You know what it really is? It's because we try to change as people. We'll be like, oh, someone gives us this tip. Like, oh yeah, journal, do this, do that. And we give it a shot, right? And we go and we spend money on it. And you know what ends up happening? We realize we're creatures of habit, and we like the initial habit that we had. And you know why? Because it's reliable. It's something we've been doing for a while. It is a routine. Kiren Williams is the routine of the Rams. He's the routine of Sean McVay. You can sit there and say, yeah, 22 could actually be a really good running back. And I think Corum is a good prospect. I do. But I don't even think it's a pass protecting issue. I think Blake Corum's probably a better pass protector than Ronnie Rivers. Although there's a possibility after Blake Corum was drafted, Ronnie Rivers took over, right? He became a much better player and had a really big progression this year. That happens. But here's what I think happened. I think it's easy in the offseason. There's no football being played. It's very easy in the offseason when you're in the draft, in the heat of the moment, and you love the idea, ooh, that sounds like fun. Having Blake Corum come on the field when Kyren, needs a breather. But you have to give Kyren a breather. And I just think in the heat of the moment, they've been in 2 of the last 3 games, Alexis, they've gone up against the NFC title teams, right? So they've gone up against good teams. And I think Sean McVay, when push comes to shove, is just not going to sit there and want to bench at any point Kiren Williams. He's too valuable. So my point here is that they might have had a plan. And I'll say this right now. I do believe these organizations, I think the Rams are a fantastic organization in the front office. I really believe that. But the reality is we've seen it multiple times. How many times do the Rams go into a year where they're like, we're going to have an outside zone run scheme, and they have to change it? Or how many times do the Rams go into a year where they're like, we're going to be an 11 personnel team? And then almost every year in Sean McVay's tenure, and this, I'm not knocking it, this is him, adjusting and having to do what's necessary to win. Almost every time in Sean McVay's tenure towards the end of the season, at some point, he switches to a run heavy. They either have 1 or 2 games. Sometimes they have more than that, where they go run heavy, 12 personnel groupings, 13 personnel. Alexis, this is what the Rams are. People don't understand. They are that team that tries out new things, but their DNA, the creature of habit that is with Sean McVay, is that he has Kiren Williams. He has 11 personnel. He's going to change things here and there. But when things are in the midst of going south, when it's gut check time, are you going to have Blake Corum out there who's proven nothing? With all due respect to him, he hasn't. Or are you going to have Kiren Williams? And I think the choice is easy. And I think that's what's happened.
But don't you feel like, though, like in my mind, I'm like, you spent a 3rd-round pick on him. It's disappointing that you're not using him. Like, I think we all like, and I like, listen, I'm not saying it would change or wouldn't change anything, because listen, we all like watching Kiren Williams out there. He's very efficient, right? So I agree with you that there's not so much a need to put Blake Corum out there right now. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a valid argument, like from the fans. It's like, well, they're just like, why? Like, you would think that if you're spending a 3rd-round pick on somebody, you would have the intention off the bat saying, we're doing a dual running back system. We're using him for X.
It's human nature. That's what I think. I don't think there's a football explanation is what I'm trying to say. I think it's more so human nature. I think that they are that reliant on Kyren. And also, I'll say this is week 3. This is when you can give Kyren a lot of those like big volume days. You can give him high snap counts, down the stretch when Kyren starts to feel a little bit banged up and it's a long season, I think then that's when they're like, oh yeah, Blake Corum week 11, right? Like that seems about a good spot where maybe he could start getting 10 carries in a game. I think so. But I think right now they're just trying to win football games. And I gotta be honest with you. There's not many times where I'm like, yeah, taking Kiren Williams out of the game makes a lot of sense.
Well, I agree.
I want to push a narrative here. Okay, two narratives, but not here. One narrative here. You'll like this. I think, and I've already kind of admitted that I was wrong on this. It's time to start using Kiren Williams like Todd Gurley, because Kyren Williams showed his athleticism in the passing game yesterday, his actual ability in the passing game. And Sean McVay, I watched the presser. He admitted, he's like, yeah, maybe he should be getting more looks, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he was saying he should be getting more looks in the passing game. Maybe we look at that route or whatever. They need to, because the Rams offenses in their history, okay, the best Rams offenses, like the greatest show on turf and that Todd Gurley offense, guess what? It was when you mixed, it was like this marriage between having a great pure running back, having a pass protector, Gurley and Falk, and also having a pass catcher. And Kyren Williams may not be able to run an entire route tree. I don't know if he can or can't because they don't use him to that level. But I'll tell you right now, he's a mismatch. When you get him out in space, he's a mismatch. He's not the straight line speed guy that you saw in Todd Gurley, right? He's just not. That's not his game. He's that guy that's going to stop and start. He's going to slip out of tackles, okay? And so I think really this is what I'll say. There are multiple things I took away from this game. Kyren Williams had 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards from scrimmage. I don't care about his yards per carry because he affected the game in multiple ways. And this is just one of those games where you didn't go up against it's not the best run defense, but it's not a bad run defense. So if you went up against a bad run defense and Kyren averaged 3.7 yards per carry, I'd be like, I want to see a better day. This is a fine performance against a tough defensive front. And Kyren Williams, I think, needs to be utilized in the passing game. And I think the Rams, week 3, did things differently to get him involved. I don't think it was a shock that all of a sudden Kyren Williams had more success when they deviated away from just going with that inside zone run, the gap scheme, the duo runs, and actually mixing it up. He had some outside zones. They had wham blocks with Jordan Whittington that we're going to talk about. And of course, Demarcus Robinson. Those 2 guys are, by the way, according to PFF, rated in the top 7 among all wide receivers in the league in blocking. So that is really what I see, is that there are multiple ways that you can use Kyren Williams. They used him almost like copy and paste, like a template the first 2 weeks. And they actually mixed up the run game. They mixed up some of their structures up front, and they had success. Now, you could say, well, a great running back doesn't need all that. Well, Kyren Williams is a great running back, because I'll tell you right now, you know what one stat is the most overrated by far in the league? It is yards after contact. Do you know why I say that? Because Kyren Williams has a lot of yards before contact. Do you know why? Because he can read. So when it comes to that run where you have to have it, that 4th down, because here's the thing. I don't think they needed to go for it on 4th down, Alexis. I don't. They could have kicked the field goal. They ended up wasting 2 minutes anyway and kicking the field goal anyway. But Kyren Williams had no blocking on that play. None. Kyren Williams basically diagnosed in real time the offensive line. This is what Cam Akers could not do. It's why he's not the starting running back here anymore. Kyren Williams diagnosed that and then in real time made a split-second decision, was able to make a quick cut and be very creative in his yards, and was able to get that first down. It's Kyren Williams' vision that sets him apart from just a guy. And I feel like too many people look at him as he's a product of a system. But I've now watched multiple times, especially on all 22, when he gets up to the line and there's nothing there, nothing. And he creates yards that aren't there on tape. So you got to start using him in the pass game. I'm gonna be very nice about this. With all due respect, Blake Corum right now does not matter. Blake Corum was drafted as a 4-year guy, right? He has a 4-year contract. He doesn't need to be thrown into the fire right away. If Kiren Williams is going to be, you barely won this game. If you took Kiren Williams off the field on any of those carries, maybe you lose. That's how I'm going to choose to view this moving forward. But I do think a lot of what I said, especially the idea that human nature kicks in, I know it's not the answer people look for, and we're not a normie podcast. I like bringing to the table a lot of analysis and stats to back up my points. But sometimes normie analysis is actually the analysis here. And that's what I think it is, Alexis. I think a lot of it is human nature. I think they just ultimately decided, in the middle of the season, like while the season's underway, we can't take Kyren off the field.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, he's too vital to what the Rams are doing, especially when you, I think, have to make up for some holes in missing Cup and Nakua and a restructured offensive line. Like I said, Matthew and Kyren are running the ship. I mean, they are all reliable back there, having to really put the offense on their back. And by the way, that first receiving touchdown, Kyren, well, the only receiving touchdown of the game, but that throw by Stafford on the money. Not that was a very tight
Oh,
window that he threw into, and that was a tight window for Kyren to catch it. I feel like that is a
crazy.
little, so that was a very good play by both of those guys. And I also will say that flip, um,
Greatest thing I've ever seen.
it was, and you know what? I don't think he did it to avoid. He was trying. The defender went low, so he did it to try and get over the defender. So it
Yeah,
wasn't like he was just like, I'm gonna randomly backflip in the end zone. He made an executive decision, seeing that the defender was basically going for his knees, and he was so close to landing it too. If
I
he would
know.
have landed it, like I said, I think if he would have maybe planned that out, he probably could have landed it, but he still almost did anyway. And it was funny. He got on Instagram after the game and it was just like, I should have landed that MF. That's what he posted on his Instagram story because he fell right on his ass. But it was still great.
Hey,
Um,
I'll take it. I will take
yeah,
it.
it
I'll
was.
say
I mean,
this also. That was
yeah,
like getting double jumped on a trampoline. You get kind of scared, so you're like, "Oh shit, I gotta
yeah.
tuck and roll." I think that's what he
Hmm.
did. He got way up there. He was way up in the air.
Yeah, well, the instinct wasn't for the flip, it was to beat it was to get over the
Yeah,
defender. And then I think in midair, it was like, all right, this could maybe work, but he didn't land it. Um, but yeah, still very cool. I watched the clip a lot.
and his
I
ass
posted,
is okay. That's the most important
yeah,
thing.
he didn't get hurt. Obviously, he went and scored two more touchdowns after that and had a great game.
That's a good sign.
Um, but I feel like that was the energy shift. I tweeted a picture of the flip and I was like, that was the moment to me in the game. I know that they still were losing at that point, but there's a vibe in the air after that and electricity that stemmed from that. That felt really palpable. But Jake, let's to close out the offense, let's talk about the receivers because we've talked about Matthew having a great game. We've talked about Kyren having a great game. Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington. Let's talk about them. Jake, what did they bring to this offense? Because two big games from them, obviously in two different, very different ways. But these guys stepped up when the Rams needed them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it wasn't the Jordan Whittington game like I was projecting, but they didn't really use him to that level. I don't want to be a jerk, but I don't know why Tyler Johnson's on the field over some of these guys. I really just don't get it. I think he's a good player, but I think he's a good back end of the wide receiver depth player. I don't necessarily think he should be starting. I definitely see why Demarcus Robinson starts. He generates a lot of interest. So when he's out there, teams are like, we saw him on tape at the end of last year. He can be a problem. He's got a body that can box out defenders. He's got a skill set that can box out defenders, go up and high point the football. He's made some spectacular plays in the past. And so I think really the 49ers came into this game knowing, since they didn't play him in week 18, they watched the film probably, I would imagine. That Saints game is probably something that's always brought up, like, watch out for Demarcus Robinson. This is what he's capable of. So when you have him and you have a guy that is as dominant as he is as a blocker in the run game, I think it's just going to keep him on the field. But what we saw was a lot of, I mentioned 12 personnel, 11 personnel. I really liked seeing the 12 personnel. I want to bring up real quick before I get into the receivers, because the receivers are going to be the meat and potatoes of this little segment that we're doing here. But I have to give a lot of credit where credit's due. Colby Parkinson and of course, totally blanking on his name right now. Hunter Long. There we go. Hunter Long. Those guys did a great job in 12 personnel. Great blocking up front. Colby Parkinson had some yards there on that, pass interference call that he drew that, he doesn't get called for. He doesn't get credit for. He only had 21 yards. And I understand he's had some drops and people have an issue with him in that regard. But Parkinson got essentially the icing on the cake call that pretty much ended the game. And fun fact, it was quite honestly the same exact thing that happened to Kyle Pitts. I'm still pissed about that because I'm a football fan, and the Falcons got absolutely screwed on that play. And it's fun. The funny thing is the reverse of that happened the week before that benefited the Chiefs as well against the Bengals. So I'm sorry. I had to point that out. Shout out to the officiating. They were pretty bad for the entire game. And then they threw 3 penalties on the 49ers at the end of the game. I thought they were bad on both sides, though, for real. I thought in the first half, we saw a lot of face masks that weren't being called on Jordan Mason. Like, I felt like every time Mason got to carry, his head would go like that. So I was like, all right, well, it was just bad on both sides. The one out of bounds, that was ridiculous. But anyway, getting off topic here. Point is, wanted to give those guys credit. Want to also point out Tyler Higbee when he comes back. This is going to be scary. I don't think people are ready for it because a lot of people have already forgotten about Tyler Higbee. I have not. Higbee and Parkinson is going to be a nasty tandem in the run game, but they also are both capable of being contributors in the receiving game. And furthermore, Tyler Higbee's got a great rapport with Matthew Stafford, was the second leading receiver, I believe, at the beginning of last year. So, and he's been that before. He's been reliable. So I'm excited for that. All-time leader for tight ends in Rams history. So we'll see him probably, I'd say after the bye, they might give him a little bit longer, but I think he's eligible for week 5, Alexis. Anyway, going back to the wide receivers here, though, the Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell effect, yards after the catch, is what I was really excited about, because these are guys that make plays after they catch the football. They can bob and weave and dodge and, juke and all that. And Tutu Atwell, the biggest issue I have, because we were talking about how, Blake Corum is underutilized. Well, what the hell are we talking about Tutu Atwell then? He's only been featured in 7 games since he was drafted in the second round in 2021. And make no mistake about it, they drafted Tutu Atwell in 2021 because they saw what Tyreek Hill was doing. And they were like, we want our own Tyreek Hill. Well, here's the thing. Tyreek Hill isn't just a deep threat, which is what annoys me. Because when people are like, yeah, we need to get Tutu Atwell involved more, throw deep down the field. No, Atwell is really dynamic all over the field. That is why I think he should be wide receiver 1 moving forward until Kupp and Nacua come back. I really believe that, because Tutu Atwell can win at all levels of the field. And then he has the dynamism to get over the top. Charvarius Ward is fast, and he blew by Charvarius Ward on that final play. So this is the type of guy we're talking about. And we got a gunslinger, Matthew Stafford, who can throw it all over the yard. One thing I want to give a lot of credit to Stafford for is Tutu Atwell dropped that catch. And some people say, he's contested, it's a tough play. Stafford put it on him. He's got to catch that. Well, what did Stafford do? The next play, he goes right back to him, gets the first down. That's the type of player Stafford is. But Tutu Atwell has been criminally underutilized in this offense for way too long. Sean McVay in his presser, we were just talking about Kiren Williams in the passing game and how he could be utilized more there. Well, we had some encouraging stuff from Sean McVay at the podium saying, Tutu Atwell has pretty much stepped up in every single role we've ever asked him to be in. And it's only like he basically is like, and yeah, he probably should have gotten way more opportunities to this point than he has. And I heard that and I was like, okay, Sean. All right, Sean, we'll prove it this week against the Bears, because I watched Nico Collins on primetime against the Bears, and the Bears have a great secondary, but Nico Collins went over, I think, 130 yards receiving. Tutu Atwell can be that this weekend against the Bears. But my point here is that Atwell, creates dynamism. He's good as a blocker. People will say he's not good as a blocker. He was top 15 per PFF in blocking grades for wide receiver at 5'9" and $160. And he was top 15 in 2023 and 2022. So that's just a lazy narrative that you're doing to my short king, and I don't approve of it. But the point I'm going to make here is this. Atwell can help you all over the field. Then you got Jordan Whittington, who can, kind of color in the lines a little bit and just add a little bit of pizzazz to the offense. He's like a running back in space, right? So you see the yards after the catch ability that is translated well. He just wasn't utilized enough. He had 3 targets for 3 catches and 28 yards. 22 of the 28 yards came after the catch. So this is somebody that has made plays on his own. Then you have Kiren Williams in the passing game, but really, I think in this one, there wasn't a lot of wide receiver usage. This was Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson. Tyler Johnson caught 3 of 4 for 20. Okay. Demarcus Robinson only caught 1 of his 4 for 32. Keep in mind, Stafford only completed 16 passes. So you can't do too much in a game when he only completes 16. He didn't throw a lot either. So it was one of those tough games, gritty games, grind it out. But they do not win this game without Tutu Atwell. They don't win this game without Jordan Whittington blocking on some of those Kiren Williams touchdown runs. And they don't win this game without Demarcus Robinson generating the attention, taking the attention off of some of these guys. Because I'll tell you right now, these have to work in a collective unit. That's how it goes, okay? And if the offense isn't humming and there's, all sorts of parts that are off, then it's not going to run. And so I thought they did a really nice job. They are probably the healthiest that they're going to be, because if you're going to be healthy on the offensive line, you want the tackles to be there. You had the tackles, you had the run game, you had the blocking up front with the wide receivers, with the offensive line. You had the pass protection, which was good enough, not amazing, but good enough. Stafford doesn't require impeccable protection. He can make plays with his legs, but Tutu Atwell, the dynamism that Tutu Atwell brings to the table keeps them in every single game moving forward. You just have to let him cook, and we'll see if they do.
I agree. I mean, he had a big game. I think he's certainly, proved his abilities
Penalty
to
yards
equal.
too.
Yeah, I just we'll see what happens in Chicago. I'm hoping that they keep riding the tutu train and use him a lot. But Jake, let's talk about the defense here,
Yeah.
because this is like a complicated thing for this Rams team. Because if I'm being honest, I think the majority of the game they didn't look good. And two things can be true. They didn't look good the majority of the game, but then they made big plays when it mattered. And both of those things can be true, and they are true. And we're going to talk about it. I want to talk about the negatives first, because I want to end the show on a good note, because this is a really, really good episode. But we would be it wouldn't be fair of us to just to skip over kind of the concerning parts of the Rams game yesterday. So Jake, let's start with so the tackling. Let's start with the tackling.
Mm-hmm.
I do not get it. I do not understand why, for whatever reason, there seems to be an illness spreading around this Rams defense that is causing just a complete inability to finish tackles. Obviously, not every play. Of course, you get some guys in there that'll make the tackle right away, but it's really concerning. And it's also concerning, particularly, I'll call out Jared Verse. And Jared Verse, I think, has been one of the better defensive players to the Rams this season. I do believe that to be true. The stats back that up. The eye test backs that up. But here's the thing. He's beating all these guys, and he's doing it well, and he's been impressive, but then he's not finishing. He's not making the tackle. A lot of these guys aren't making the tackle, but Jared Verse, I see getting a lot of criticism, and I do think it's slightly fair to say, why is he not wrapping up tackles? Why are these defenders not wrapping up tackles? I'm blanking on which period it was, Jake, or which quarter it was, when Brock Purdy literally had 20 seconds. It was the most embarrassing thing I've seen this Rams defense do, maybe in a decade, if I'm being honest, where Brock Purdy could have made himself a sandwich. And he was sitting back there. Not a single Rams defender was in his orbit. And I'm sitting there thinking, are we being punked right now? What is going on? I mean, the lack of pressure, the lack of ability to tackle. Defense got confused on a lot of plays, a lot. I mean, Juwan Jennings, absolutely. They had no answer for him for most of the game.
We look like geniuses with the Juwan Jennings thing, because
how
many times do we say, the Rams should go out and get Juwan Jennings?
Well, right. I mean, we do like him a lot, but still, I didn't think that he was going to have that much success. I mean, he just absolutely brutal. I mean, entire game, one sack, it went to Byron Young, who had a really good game. And I actually think Byron Young needed to have a good game because, I think he had a slower start to the season and he really showed his intensity yesterday, which I thought was good. I mean, you'd Quentin Lake led the team, or him and Troy Reeder were tied with 6 tackles
That was like
in
his
the
best
game.
game of his career, Byron
Yeah,
Young.
yes. I thought Quentin Lake also had a really good game. I mean, Cameron Curl had, a lot of tackles. Cameron Kinchins, I thought had a really good game. Um, but Jake, what is it about this? I'm struggling to find the words to say, because I don't want to be too mean, but they're struggling to figure it out. It's not working. There's something that is not working with this defense. They look very, very confused. The run defense is not very good. Um, the secondary is weird because they'll have some plays where they're super locked in, and you're like, that's like Cameron Kinchins and Quentin Lake had a lot of plays yesterday where you're like, great job. But then there's other plays where they are completely lost. And you saw the 49ers take advantage of that. So it's very inconsistent. And it's a little bit hypocritical of me because I said in all the weeks leading up to the Rams season, I pointed out that this defense is going to struggle to start off. I
Yeah.
was cautioning everybody. I was like, guys, they're gonna struggle because this is a young defense, it's a new defense, and it's gonna take them a while to figure it out. And now that we're there, I'm sitting here going like, why can they not figure it out? So it is a little bit hypocritical of me. But I think the tackling is I didn't expect. I really don't know what's going on with the tackling. And listen, Brock Purdy, I think, is an underrated quarterback. But he's not Kyler Murray. And that
No,
off
but
that
we kind of
that
knew
off
he was going to do that. We kind of had a
it
feeling.
and this off the 49ers offensive line, maybe they just played a lot better than we expected. But I mean, the plays, there was just certain plays that were unacceptable. I mean, it was like slip and slide out there, but they weren't slipping. They just were missing. It was so weird. Jake, what is your take on that? Give your thoughts on that because I quite frankly, again, it's another thing I keep being asked about the tackling. And I'm like, listen, if I knew why they couldn't tackle, I would say it, but I don't. I, maybe I'll show up to Rams practice and I'll be like, all right, guys. That's what sometimes I think when people message me or so angry about the tackling. I'm like, do you want me to show up to the Rams practice and give a tackling clinic, like tackling 101 refresher? I was like, I don't think anybody can do that. Um, so there has to be a deeper reason than that.
Yeah, well, it's weird because they have a lot of good things to take away from this game. 27 pressures is nothing to scoff at. I mean, this is 7 pressures from Braden Fisk, 7 from Kobe Turner, 4 from Byron Young, 4 from Verse, 2 from Hoyt, 1 from Bobby Brown, Cameron Curl, and Neville Gallimore. I thought that there were some really good things to take away from this game. I thought Christian Roseboom and Troy Reeder, I mean, they gave up a total of 23 yards on 4 targets. So 23 yards. That's what they gave up in coverage. These are guys that have been called out as liabilities by fans, but they really were not that bad. Here's the thing. They did it again they really focused on taking Brandon Ayuk out of the game, and they let the other guy kill them. They did this in week 1. We talked about it. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 catches, 13 yards. They feel great about that. Well, Jameson Williams still had over 120 yards receiving. And that game, I told you what that was. That was Trey White. Trey White got roasted, and he had no help over the top. So they were like, yeah, Trey White, you go and be the guy, right? That didn't work out very well. Then we see Trey White against the Cardinals, and he struggles mightily. Trey White's already given up 4 touchdowns in 3 games. I'm trying not to say
Yeah.
his name, but I'm going to have to. Akella Witherspoon gave up 3 the entire year last year in 18 games. So, all right, here's the deal. I think actually, fundamentally, this defense, yes, they have things to work on. They're young. This is a rookie defensive coordinator. I will say this from watching it. There's clear, first off, Cameron Kinchins should not be on the field. He's not ready. It's okay. They draft 24, 25-year-olds, Alexis. That's what they do. He was a 21-year-old guy that they drafted in the 3rd round. He played a little preseason. They said, we've seen enough. He's going to be a contributor. He's not ready. He's simply not. Okay? I'm just going to be honest with you. That touchdown he gave up was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And the problem right now with Kinchins is he's playing too fast and it just reckless. He helmet to helmeted Troy Reeder and Christian Roseboom. In addition to that, week 1, he had a costly penalty that you could argue aided the Lions win in that game. And he didn't really even play that much. So this is the thing. Okay. He's not ready. Then you have Jared Verse, who's generating a lot of pressure. He's winning. His win rate was 20%. He's actually looking really good. So the real issue lies with the fact that while he had 4 pressures, he had 4 missed tackles. He's got to be able to finish sacks, right? Then you have Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner. And these guys, you love them. They got 7 pressures. You're feeling great about that. But guess what? You know what they're missing? And I knew to a degree that I was maybe underestimating it enough. It's Aaron Donald, but they're missing Aaron Donald for not the reason that you would think. They generated 27 pressures on Brock Purdy. They don't miss Aaron Donald to generate pressures. They're still doing that, right? Not that Aaron Donald wouldn't help. They probably would have had 40 in this game. Aaron Donald finishes sacks. These guys have to learn how to do that. And Braden Fisk, he is an athlete. He's not Aaron Donald. So when Brock Purdy gets out and runs away, this is what we're seeing, the lack of Aaron Donald. You're not going to get that shoestring sack where Brock Purdy's going off to the sideline and Aaron Donald would chase him down. No, now you're going to have guys just missing every time. And unfortunately, on a lot of those plays, Alexis, you go back, you watch, they only rush 2. So when you rush 2 and you have all those guys covering and Brock Purdy's just looking, he can't find anybody, they're all the way back in the defensive backfield. Well, guess what? It's going to be easy for him to run for a first down. And that's the things that he did. Another thing here, Quentin Lake, love him. He's obviously a friend of the show. He's been on twice. He did not play well in this game. He gave up 109 yards. Now, do you know why? I don't necessarily think it was all Lake's fault. Here's the thing. And this is what I've been saying, and I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but playing Tre'Davious White over Ahkello Witherspoon will kill this team if they continue doing it. And the reason I say that is because guess what, Alexis? You know why Quentin Lake had 8 targets and he gave up 6 for 109? I'll tell you why. Because unfortunately, he was the guy who was going to have to give up those yards because they were scheming around and bracketing to hide the inefficiencies of Tre'Davious White. I don't think he's the same player. I don't think it's a hot take. He's not the same all-pro level player from years ago. He's had 2 major injuries. This is his 3rd game from an Achilles tear. And the problem is people, they think with their feelings and not their facts. The reality is I'm not trying to say that he's a loser because he's bad or anything like that. I'm saying, as sad as it sounds, Alexis, those injuries have robbed him of some of that ability, right? I think that's fair to say. Doesn't mean I don't have, I don't have any sort of remorse for that. Like, I feel bad, right? He's not the same player. So what they had to do in this game is they had to literally scheme around him. They had to hide him in coverage. And unfortunately, it comes out looking like Quentin Lake got absolutely roasted. And while he didn't play well, he was kind of the sacrificial lamb when you're trying to hide Tre'Davious White from getting exposed because he's already given up 4 touchdowns. So when you have all those things, right, that's a problem. The linebackers, they're not ultra athletic. I don't think they played anywhere near as bad as some people would say. I thought no one's going to talk about it, but that play, I think, was 3rd down. They run the ball with Jordan Mason, who's been a freight train. He broke more tackles than any running back for the first 2 games. I thought Troy Reeder's gap fill there was huge, absolutely huge on 3rd down. And I just want to give credit. I want to give credit to them because, look, I don't think Troy Reeder and Christian Roseboom are the best linebackers in the world. I don't. But I don't think that they played anywhere near as bad as people are saying. And furthermore, I don't think the run game, like the run defense, was bad. I don't. People were saying it's bad. Brock Purdy, understand this. Brock Purdy, when he takes off and runs, is not the run game. That's not. That's a completely different thing. That's basically the passing game. He's taking off and scrambling. It's not when you go into a play, I'm going to run. A design quarterback run with Lamar Jackson, that's a run game. Isaac Guerrero and Jordan Mason carrying the ball, that's a run game. Brock Purdy running for his life is not a run game because the pressure created that, right? The coverage downfield created that. A running attack is an attack. It's how you're choosing to go about it. You're throwing the first punch. You're running the ball. I'm handing it off to Jordan Mason. He's attacking your defense. But when I rush Brock Purdy and he's cowering away and he has to run for a first down, he's not attacking my defense. He's defending himself. That's not the run game. So, Alexis, I looked at the run game and people will see 34 carries, 137 yards. But the reality is that's not even that bad. That's 4 yards per carry. That's not awful. We'll take that. Jordan Mason went 19 for 77. That's 4.1. Isaac Guerrero, 5 for 19. That's 3.8. Brock Purdy only averaged 4.1 yards per carry, right? But more importantly here, Jordan Mason going into this game had so much hype. Mason had back-to-back 100-yard games and had averaged over 5 yards carry in both of them, and it scored 2 touchdowns in those two combined. This game, they came in, they're like, we're not going to let Jordan Mason beat us. We know Kyle Shanahan. We know everybody. We know the media pundits. Everybody's thinking that Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, are going to run down our throats. And you know what? The defense might not have been perfect. They only gave up 24, right? So that's not even that bad. But they might not have been perfect. But you know what they did very well? They basically said, Jawan Jennings can wreck the game all he wants, but we're not going to let you run the ball. You're not going to be able to get Brandon Ayuk involved, and no one's really going to be able to do much of anything. And guess what? While it might not be the way that I would have gone about the defense and letting anybody go off the way Jawan Jennings did, I really got to give them credit because this game is close and they made plays down the stretch to win the game because they stopped the run. The 49ers, when they had that lead, could not run the football. They couldn't. They didn't have that chunk play that they had earlier in the game. So when push came to shove, they stepped up in the run game, and that is something that kind of goes unnoticed.
Well, I agree with that and the Jordan Mason thing because you're right. I'm not sure that there was a player who had more hype than
No,
Jordan Mason going into this game. And you know what? Rightfully so. I'll give him credit because Christian McCaffrey is a huge loss, and Jordan Mason absolutely stepped up the first 2 weeks for the 49ers and was just a force. So I
I
totally,
think
it's
Price
not,
Picks had him at 90 yards. Like that's what we're talking about.
that's, yeah.
90
I mean,
yards.
yeah. And you know what? He is a very good player. So, I'm not taking that away from him, but the Rams
Yeah.
defense did, I think, play against him a lot better than I thought, obviously, than when we talked when we were doing our preview episode. But yeah, I just think the defense, and I actually thought, I thought Kinchins and Lake actually had a lot of like really good plays, like I said earlier. But I thought to me the biggest concern with this defense for me, what stands out the most is like the simple just closing out tackles and getting run all over. It's just weird. It feels like they're not very good in open space. And I'm not saying every play, because you do see, and like Reader, like you said, I think had some really good plays in tackles. But yeah, there's a weirdness going on with this defense, and I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's I think it's probably a combination of a lot of different things.
There was only 2 missed tackles in
But
the run game, by the way. So the 6 others that they had were all via
yeah,
sacks.
yeah, and it's frustrating,
Oh,
right?
it
Because
is.
we want to start to see the sacks. I mean, 1 sack in the entire game, not great when you watched. And these defenders have opportunities, so many against Purdy, and like I said, the one where he literally was back there. I'd have to get out a timer, but we all know what play I'm talking about. When Purdy was dancing back there was no one within, it seemed like 10 feet of him. And I thought, this is absolutely can never happen again, or I'm going to have a heart attack. But yeah, I think overall, though, this defense did a pretty good job of shutting down the 49ers offense, minus Jawan Jennings, who just, you know what? He had a hat trick. He was the Kyren of the 49ers yesterday, and credit to him because he had a really good game. But, aside from Jawan Jennings, I thought that the Rams played much better than we thought, like we talked about in our preview episode. And I just think, yeah, it was listen, both of these teams were injured going into the game. We're not going to deny that. I mean, the 49ers obviously were missing Debo, they were missing Christian McCaffrey, and they were missing George Kittle. Those are very good players. Those are very big names. Not taking away from that, but you know what? The Rams were missing Cooper Kupp. They were missing Puka Nacua. The offensive line is in the state the offensive line is, and it's new. And this defense didn't play, they didn't have as good of a game as we would have hoped against the 49ers. And we still managed to fight and pull out the win. And I think that that is something to be very proud of if you're a Rams fan. And what that should signal to you is when this team gets healthy and the defense takes more time to get it together and figure some things out and hopefully sharpen some tackling skills, which shouldn't be a whole process, hopefully. I think they're going to start to look even better. And I think they're going to start to look really good. And I think that, next week, Jake, going against the Chicago Bears is going to be a real test for the offense, but I think it's going to be an opportunity for the defense. And I'll tell you what, and we're going to talk about this in a different episode, but the Bears have, in my opinion, a top 5 defense right now in NFL.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy against them.
So this is going to be a real opportunity for the Rams to build off the success offensively against Chicago, and then the defense I think they have a massive opportunity going against a Bears offense that is really struggling, and a rookie quarterback who is trying to figure it out, and a terrible offensive line. But we'll talk about that on Friday night. But yeah, Jake. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to say, just to kind of close out the recap of this game against the 49ers. I mean, I just feel like it's such a good, aside from all of the on the field stuff in terms of gameplay, for the locker room, this is really, really positive. This is a really big achievement for this Rams team and for these rookies and these young guys to have had the game that they did. And guys who maybe aren't rookies, but like Tutu Atwell, right? Who don't get used a lot, and to have this big game, I think it's going to really do wonders for this Rams team. And I think that they're going to go into week 4 even more fired up possibly than they already have been, and really hope to build off this momentum. So guys, if you're a Rams fan, this is very, very exciting. Not just because we beat the 49ers, but because of the game that we had. And yeah, I'll say Matthew Stafford is still him. And Kiren Williams is still him. And I don't want to hear disrespect against either one of those guys anymore.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think really what it comes down to is the Rams. And this is really what I've been saying when I said the season's not over and you need to stop. Because people are just like, oh, yeah, it's done. Giving up on this team, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, none of these injuries, and I'm not saying I'm thankful for the injuries to begin with, but none of them have been ruled out for the year. None of them. A lot of these guys are getting back after the bye against the Raiders, maybe a little bit longer, but week 7. And I always bring this up because I think this is important. It adds context and it kind of adds clarity. When the Rams lost Kiren Williams after the Arizona Cardinals game, they went 1-4 without him. Going into week 11, they had 3 wins last year. 3. So they have a chance. If they win the next 2 games, they will be way ahead of where they were last year. They would be going into the bye with 3 wins in week 6. So I think that's something that needs to be said, because I think people forget. I'll say this right now. The biggest need right now for them, I can't even believe I'm saying it, is John Johnson. John Johnson is the biggest need for them. Obviously we love the guy and he's been great. He's actually rated as the number 1 safety according to PFF. Even still, he's number 1. And I hate that he got hurt, because I really think we were starting to see John Johnson before he left the Rams, and he was playing at just a different level. And I think having that veteran presence in the back end instead of like a Kinchins who's just very inexperienced, I think really would have helped this team. So they have to try to make things happen. I think this week, some good news, hopefully, we get from, maybe we hear Tyler Higbee's getting closer. We hear something like that. It is week 4 after all. So this is the last week that Tyler Higbee would have to wait until coming off the PUP list. So we'll see on that. But I want to say this. I do think this week we will see a Kello Witherspoon. I do think we're going to make an adjustment. And what I said on the stream yesterday was this. It doesn't matter how you get it done, just get it done. You can then clean it all up the next week. And so now if the Rams got the win, and it was kind of ugly at points, and the defense may have been a little concerning, you got to give the defense a lot of credit because they stepped up when their best was required. Kobe Durant, Braden Fisk stepped up. And I want to give a shout out to Bobby Brown. There were 6 guys on this defensive front, Alexis, that had double-digit win rates, okay? And what a lot of people don't understand with Bobby Brown, because he doesn't have the counting stats. When I say counting stats, he doesn't have the sacks. He doesn't get a lot of pressures. Do you know why? Because Bobby Brown is this Rams version, and was last year, by the way, in case you didn't know. He's this year and last year's version of Michael Brockers. Was Brockers capable of rushing the passer? Absolutely. Was Brockers capable of having maybe 8 sacks in a season? I believe so. But Brockers was asked to do an important thing. You have to be unselfish. You have to realize, I'm not going to get to celebrate with those sacks. I'm not going to, maybe it's going to hurt my contract negotiations, whatever. I am doing this because this guy can create more havoc. So because he's doing a thankless job and creating double teams and taking on triple teams, and I'm not saying he's always taking on triple, but he is taking on double. What Bobby is doing is opening up opportunities for Fisk and Turner to eat. And 14 pressures between the two of them against the 49ers shows it's working. So he was on the injury report. He's obviously a little, dinged up. Shout out to Bobby Brown. Thought he did excellent job, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So I just wanted to say that, and also just remind you guys to like, subscribe, and check out today's sponsor, the video prize picks of the episode. Using code JKBogan, you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup, whether you win or lose.
There you have it, folks. We will be back Friday night, per usual, to preview our game against the Chicago Bears. If anybody is going to that game, message me on Twitter or tweet me or whatever you call it now, X, because I will be at that game.
X. We don't call it.
Yeah,
X.
we call it Twitter. But I will be at the Rams versus Bears game in Chicago next Sunday. I would love to see you guys there. I know a lot of people have been messaging me about a chance to meet up and say hi. I am definitely open to that. I just don't know what's going on. Soldier Field's very weird with tailgating, and it's really hard to find out where Rams fans are tailgating. So I don't know that there's a Rams tailgate specifically. But I'm just going to show up. I'm going to try to meet as many people as I can. We'll have to say hi to everybody. And yeah, hopefully I'm present for a Rams win. So definitely reach out to me if you're going to be at the Rams Bears game in Chicago. Guys, as always, please like and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at the Alexis Craft. Jake is at JKBogan. And we'll be back soon. But as always, guys, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.